Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this 27th day of June 2022. Well, right here in Brisbane, it's 16 degrees and partly cloudy. Still a wonderful day out here. So, ladies and gentlemen, today, on this Monday, we have for you the daily news update. Of course, then we have the daily India report as well. Well, right now, getting into the news, we're going to begin with this concerns about children falling behind the digital skills.
Smart kids playing with smart tech.
Il mio numero fortunato è 4.
While these Western Sydney high schoolers learn Italian, they also learn to code robots.
How would that be translated into English?
Now the school is taking its tech education further with an introduction to artificial intelligence.
What Nick's going to do now is show us the data behind QuickDraw.
The one-day program, developed in the US and funded by donations, is being rolled out to more than 250 Australian schools this year. It's designed to spark curiosity in the tech that will follow many of these students into careers. About 7,000 students graduated from uni with an IT degree in 2019. It's the fastest growing field of education in the country, but still a far cry from the estimated 60,000 IT workers needed annually to fill jobs.
If we don't invest right now and big time, we absolutely risk being left behind here in Australia. We know that there are nations around the world that are plumping a lot of resources into supporting the digital skilled workforce of the future.
AI is an ever-increasing part of our lives. It's in our security, search engines, maps, and our nightly entertainment. And it's all over social media. Face filters can change our accessories, our mood, even our bone structure. But in every useful or fun bit of AI, there are ethical dilemmas. And experts want kids to start grappling with them now.
You see, I would never say these things.
Students are learning to spot deepfakes, digitally altered videos eerily close to reality.
Is this okay? Is it okay to do this?
I think it'll get to the point where people will literally just don't know what's real, what's fake.
Yes, there are people who have good intentions, but there are always people who have bad intentions as well.
In New South Wales, the IT syllabus for years 7 to 10 was published back in 2003.
The IST, the syllabus I'm teaching at the moment, is 17 years old.
A curriculum review has been underway since 2018, but 4 years is a long time in the tech world.
That curriculum needs to be examined and built on and evolve probably a little bit more rapidly than any of the other curricula across Australia, just because the tech is changing so quickly.
There is content, contemporary content in those old syllabuses, 2003, but it's not foregrounded enough, it's not prominent enough. That's why the government has asked us to change them, to make sure that they are current and that they reflect what students are facing in the world of work today.
Kind of going to take over the world in the future. So yeah, I think it would be good for other students to learn about AI.
And there's plenty to learn.
Bye-bye now.
Ruby Cornish, ABC News, Sydney.
And there's never a stop to learning, and you learn every day. And of course, with these robotic things and the artificial intelligence, the AI, all the things, all you need to do is Google something, and next thing it comes up on your Facebook feed. There are many things like that, and of course, all the computer software programs that we've been used to, like simple things as the Microsoft Office. There are many things in there now that it comes in automatically, and they think about this. Gone are the days when you opened up Word and you did what you wanted to do, not what that Word wanted you to do. So is the case in many of the programs. There, mainly a lot of these things have been put in to make life easy for people, but often it complicates, because all you want to do is a simple thing, but you can't because they keep popping up with all the things, and that you can't go past because you haven't added this. And of course, when you're doing a search for something these days, the big problem is a similar looking website might appear to what that product that you are looking for, or that information base that you're trying to access, but it's a third party thing. And of course, before you know it, you are subscribing to something, and even though it might be free, they still want your credit card number and all those kind of things that happen. So it is an ever-changing world out there. Well, of course, right now, another matter that has been always contentious is the abortion debate. So what is happening in that scene?
Won't go back! We won't go back!
Emotions are running high in the United States. The decision has reverberated around the world. In Australia, abortion advocates are also raising the alarm.
It's definitely a postcode lottery, so depending on where you live can dictate how, where and why you can access abortion care.
In Australia, abortion laws are set by the states and territories, resulting in a patchwork of different rules and cut-off dates. Some states limit access during the second trimester of pregnancy. In Tasmania, abortions are allowed up to 16 weeks, but after that, patients need the approval of 2 doctors. In New South Wales and Queensland, it's 22 weeks, 23 in South Australia, and 24 weeks in both Victoria and the Northern Territory. While there are no limits in the ACT, in Western Australia, the approval of 2 doctors is required for any abortion up to 20 weeks. After that, it goes before a panel of 6 doctors.
And we still have women and pregnant people travelling across Australia in order to access abortion care in other states and territories.
The Australian Human Rights Law Centre is calling for uniformity to end the confusion.
We don't need one national abortion law in Australia. What we need is for states and territories and the federal government to treat abortion as healthcare at the legal, policy and service delivery level.
While Australian politicians have decried the US decision, they're not convinced there's a case for change here.
Well, thank God we are a country here in Australia where abortion is not an issue that divides the Labor Party and the Liberal Party.
There is no constitutional right to abortion in Australia. We don't have that structure for this issue.
In terms of our laws, I haven't had any concerns raised with me.
These are matters between a woman and her doctor, and that's the way they should stay.
Federal Health Minister Mark Butler says the laws relating to pregnancy termination are a state and territory responsibility, and the arrangements are well settled. While all states have moved to implement safe access zones around abortion clinics, not all have fully decriminalised the procedure itself. Doctors in Western Australia still face criminal penalties for performing abortions that don't meet the strict requirements. Rebecca Trigger, ABC News.
And of course, this has always been a matter which has a lot of concern out there in the community. But the uniformity of the laws nationally is something which I would always support, because it should not matter, any rule for that matter. If it applies to one state, it should apply to all the states, except for when it is something which is very, very unique to a state, such as mining or natural resources that's based in one. There could be slightly different rules there. But when it concerns people and human beings and their well-being and their health, it should be uniform. Same when we talk about domestic violence and other things. You cannot just change your, the place of residence and be immune or escape some of the penalties that might be for committing a particular crime. So what I'm trying to say there is that it should be uniform right across the board, right across the nation, one rule for all. Well, right now, moving on, the other thing that we will be talking about in detail on Wednesday is property and rising property prices.
This is not just a farm. This is a dream come true.
And I couldn't think of anything better than the lifestyle that farming offers. I'm not afraid of work. I love to work. I live to work, really.
For children, it's all learning and growing and exploring that I love about being out on land.
Wade von Stiglitz traded a lucrative job in the gas industry for life on the land. He was hoping to buy 300 hectares but could only afford 30. Making a living on such a small farm is tough, and rising property prices makes expansion difficult.
This place has gone up $400,000 in bloody 2 years. It was valued at $650, $700, and now, I can't see this going on the internet for under $1 million. Like how do you compete with that?
Tasmania has some of the most expensive farmland in the nation, but farm values are soaring right across the country, with prices in some states jumping by 1/3 in 12 months.
I've been in this game, banking, finance for 30, 40 years, and this is the most buoyant I've ever seen it. You know, land prices are going up at an alarming rate, and commodity prices are going with it.
Even families who have worked the land for generations are feeling the pinch.
You're competing with corporates now that have billions of dollars. You're competing on a whole different level now.
Higher interest rates will soon make it even harder to buy your first farm.
Look, it's no different really to a certain extent to what's happened in the residential market. There'll be more pressure on those young people entering the scheme to build a reasonable deposit to be able to get in.
And the increased cost of servicing debt is another cost hitting farmers and pushing up food prices.
Electricity, fuel, you know, you name it. There's been big cost increases at farm gate, so they needed this lift in commodity prices just to cover that.
The agriculture sector is carrying more than $83 billion of debt, up from $70 billion just 5 years ago. But favourable trading conditions in recent years have allowed many farmers to shore up their finances as interest rates rise.
A lot of people, as I said, have either paid off debt or have reinvested in their farming properties. So we've seen more water development, as an example, better equipment.
Farmers know how to ride the ups and downs of their industry, but they've never had to ride property prices this high. Lachlan Bennett, ABC News, Sunnyside.
And the property prices are going high, and of course when we look at those farm prices, it is making it hard for people to get into their first farm. And of course farming is one area where we need to encourage people to get into that sector, as we have noticed, lately, having tried to get some lettuce. Of course, we saw the same thing happen with ginger a little while back. So, and the point to note there is that the shortages that are happening now are due to the floods and all those things from where we lost production. But then people argue that, well, while it was all floods, we still got the produce, but those are the produce that were planted before the floods. Yes. So when the floods came, the produce, they were not planted. And the result is what we are dealing with right now. So it's always further down the track when the supply chain gets affected, and it does affect everyone. Right now, looking at some of the nature reserves, there's a community which is divided over the Yarra Ranges mountain bike park.
Even in the depths of winter, Rachel Hoare can be found hurtling down the bush trails near her home at Warburton.
It's a meditative feeling. You kind of just zone out and get into the flow of things and forget about whatever else is happening in your day or in your life.
She can't wait for the local council to build a 180-kilometre trail network in the hills around the Yarra Valley town.
A network that's got all sorts of levels of trails, so whether that's a green, easy, or up to black, which is more advanced, so it'll cater for everyone.
It's billed as a world-class network that will attract international visitors, but it's also pitched at young people.
Young people who are stuck on screens or maybe stuck at home with not a big backyard or anything like that. A project like this, it allows them to be exposed to the environment, to nature.
Located on the banks of the Yarra River, 80 kilometres from Melbourne, the old gold mining town of Warburton has long been a popular weekend getaway, even in winter when snow hits nearby Mount Donabuang. The Yarra Ranges Shire Council says the mountain bike trails will take tourism in the region to another level. It predicts the network will attract 130,000 extra visitors each year. Good news for local businesses recovering from the pandemic.
I know from our perspective it'll give us confidence to sort of continue to invest in the town and in the building. It'll also help with local employment.
But some locals like Warburton just the way it is.
You're basically slap bang in the middle of this.
We are, yep. We're completely encircled by trails. It'd be the first mountain bike park in Australia to have a residential area in the middle of it.
Aside from losing the peace and quiet on his bush block, Damien Flynn believes thousands of extra visitors each weekend in summer will cause chaos if a bushfire hits.
It just seems crazy to be building a mountain bike park in one of the most fire-prone areas of the whole Victoria. There's only one road out of the Warburton Valley, and if that road is blocked, then everyone will be trapped in the town with no escape.
He also fears a loss of community.
It's going to see an exodus from our town as rentals dry up and are turned into Airbnbs.
Other locals like Nick Fox are worried the National Park trails will threaten ancient rainforest, home to the critically endangered leadbeater's possum.
Every little fragment that we have left needs to be protected. These little pockets, these sanctuaries, need to remain that for all these threatened species.
After years of intense debate, it's now up to the State Planning Minister to decide if the project goes ahead. The trails through the National Park here on Mount Donabuang are clearly the most controversial of the mountain bike project, and there's speculation the Minister might make a compromise decision where the trails here are knocked back and those through State Forest on the south side of town go ahead. With a decision expected within weeks, Warburton is holding its breath.
I think we're all feeling quite excited, but also quite nervous.
Definitely anxious and hopeful that that it falls our way.
But if the project does get the green light, it's almost certain to be challenged in the courts.
We will fight on. This project will endanger our lives.
The tension in and around the town may take some time to thaw. Danny Morgan, ABC News, Warburton.
And of course, it is always the case when something gets put on that people will all complain, and some very good reasons. When people are used to living in a particular way, and you put something in, and all of a sudden you got so many visitors coming in there, it changes. It automatically changes the whole place. It is not the same anymore. I'm not saying that it is good or bad, but what I'm saying that it does change all that. Well, right now. Right now we're going to look at the problem that has always been facing PTSD is what I'm talking about. We know about all the retained soldiers and what they have always gone through and what happens once they've come. So today we're going to be talking with Brodie Moore. He was just 17 when he joined the army and served as a rifleman in the 6th Battalion of Royal Australian Regiment, the 6 RAR. And he did that for 6 years. Brodie was deployed in Afghanistan in 2010 on Monitoring Track Task Force, which is MTF-1. This deployment was the bloodiest of the entire Afghanistan campaign. They suffered heavy losses, and 6 soldiers paid the ultimate sacrifice from this battle group, and the 5 others from Special Operations. But the battle didn't end on the front line. No stranger to grief and loss, he has seen many of his friends from the army suffer after returning home, with some losing the battle with PTSD and taking their own life. He has recently become part of the Classics for the Cause Veteran Benefits Australia Patient Care Team, offering health checks to veterans in a community via a mobile health service. And today, joining us via a phone link, we have Brodie Moore, veteran, and NES as VBA with us. So, welcome to the show, Brodie.
For more information about veteran services, Australians and veterans can visit www.veteranbenefitsaustralia.com.
And thank you very much for that. As I mentioned before, that he has done a wonderful job. So Brodie, can you tell us a little bit more about the research findings? What has the research found?
Research reveals that veterans are suffering in silence with their mental health, particularly when it comes to PTSD. ADF males experience PTSD at a rate at nearly double that of the general community, so 8.1% versus 4.6% in the general community. New research from Classics for a Cause found that 1 in 4 Aussies, 25%, feel there isn't enough support for PTSD. And a third, so 32%, said that Australians are really letting down their veterans. So it's clear from the research that more needs to be done to support veterans struggling with PTSD.
And I couldn't agree more, and you have said that rightfully there. But looking at the PTSD, so how does it affect Australian Defence Force males in comparison to the general public?
I just think that obviously veterans work in such a high stress and confronting environment. I'm a veteran myself. I've experienced that, and the general population aren't really exposed to these kind of high stress environments. It can be a real struggle to adjust back to normal life, especially when experiencing symptoms of PTSD.
Okay, so looking at those kind of situations and scenarios, and now we have that fact. So how is VBA helping the veteran community?
Here at Veteran Benefits Australia, we spread awareness of medical and allied health services available to veterans, and we help connect veterans with those services. We help to improve the lives of veterans through getting them the healthcare support that they need, and if they aren't eligible for that support, we'll help them get eligibility through the compensation process. We found that a large number of veterans feel that the Department of Veteran Affairs is a really difficult process to navigate, and actually understanding what they're entitled to and how to get those entitlements is a difficult process that a lot of veterans struggle with.
Okay, so in that struggle, what advice would you give to veterans or Aussies navigating the PTSD?
My advice to veterans struggling with PTSD is to reach out to fellow veterans for support, as well as seek help from the relevant veteran services and healthcare services. I think it's really important that we normalise these mental health conditions through spreading awareness and talking about them, because that'll reduce the stigma that surrounds them and will make veterans more likely to speak up. Obviously, veterans with PTSD need to know that there is a strong support network there for them in the veteran community, and a lot of really great healthcare support services available, and they just need to speak up.
Speak up, they do really need to, but there's only so much that we can cover on this segment here, Brody. So if people are looking for more information, where can they go?
Australians and veterans can visit www.veteranbenefitsaustralia.com and also find us on Facebook.
Well, once again, Brody, thank you so much for being on the show and talking to us about this very, very important part. And I'd like to commend you on all that you are doing in that regards.
Thanks so much for having me on.
And thank you so much for being on the show. As I mentioned before, so ladies and gentlemen, right now it's time to go to our daily India report.
Welcome to the Daily India Report that brings you reports, interviews, features and much more on India and the Indian diaspora. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi at BRICS Summit says that mutual cooperation can help global post-COVID recovery. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed the 14th BRICS Summit hosted by China. He said member nations of BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa grouping had managed to undertake structural changes over the last few years, increasing the influence of the institution. In his opening remarks, Modi said cooperation among the member nations in several sectors has benefited their citizens. Among other leaders present were Chinese President Xi Jinping, Russian President Vladimir Putin and top leaders of Brazil and South Africa. It is a matter of happiness that membership of the new development bank has increased, Modi said, adding cooperation among the member countries has benefited their citizens. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi says the Indian economy is expected to grow by 7.5% this year. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has said that Indian economy is expected to grow by 7.5% this year, making it the fastest growing major economy. During a virtual address at the opening ceremony of BRICS Business Forum, Modi said that there are investment opportunities to the tune of USD 1.5 trillion under the country's national infrastructure pipeline. Highlighting the growth of India's digital economy, he said its value will reach USD 1 trillion by 2025 and that the government is supporting innovation in every sector. He said the kind of digital transformation that is taking place in India today has never been seen in the world before. In order to deal with economic problems arising out of the pandemic in India, we have adopted the mantra of reform, perform and transform, and the results of this approach are evident from the performance of the Indian economy, he said. India and China discussed the return of stranded students and the resumption of direct flights. India and China have discussed the return of thousands of Indian students stranded at home for 2 years due to Beijing's COVID-19 ban and also the resumption of direct flights disrupted by the coronavirus pandemic. The issue of return of the Indian students figured in the talks between Indian ambassador to China, Pradeep Kumar Rawat, and Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi. Wang recalled his meeting with his Indian counterpart S. Jaishankar during his visit to New Delhi in March this year and mentioned the Chinese side attached importance to the Indian side's concerns regarding the return of the Indian students and that he hoped to see early progress on this. A press release from the Indian embassy quoted Wang as saying, Foreign Minister Wang also referred to discussions on the resumption of direct flight connectivity between the two sides. China in the recent months began permitting some foreign students to return to the country. NDA candidate Draupadi Murmu is all set for a comfortable win in the Indian presidential election. Draupadi Murmu, the Bharatiya Janata Party-led ruling National Democratic Alliance's nominee for the July 18 presidential polls, is all set for a comfortable victory as parties like Biju Janata Dal and Yuvajana Shramika Raitu Congress Party have backed the former Jharkhand governor's candidature. The NDA has 49% or 5,32,351 of the 10,86,431 votes in the Electoral College for the presidential election. BJP had 31,686 votes, YSRCP 45,550 and All India Anna Dravida Munitra Kazhagam 14,940 votes. Support of either BJD or YSRCP is enough for Murmu, who is said to be the first tribal president to win. NDA is also banking on the support from Jharkhand Mukti Morcha, a scheduled tribe-led party. GMM is likely to break ranks with the coalition of opposition parties, which has named former BJP leader Yashwant Sinha as its candidate. World Bank okays $245 million loans for Indian Railways modernization. The World Bank has approved a $245 million loan to support India's efforts to modernize all rail freight and logistics infrastructure, the international financial institution said. The rail logistics project will help India shift more traffic from road to rail, making transport, both freight and passenger, more efficient and reducing millions of tons of greenhouse gas emissions each year. The project will also incentivize more private sector investment in the railway sector. The Indian Railways is the fourth largest rail network in the world, having transported 1.2 billion tons of freight in fiscal ended March 2020. Yet 71% of India's freight is transported by road and only 17% by rail. The statement also said that capacity constraints of Indian Railways have limited the volumes and reduced the speed and reliability of shipments. As a result, it has been losing market share to trucks over the years. In 2017 to 18, its market share was 32%, down from 52% a decade earlier. Road freight is the largest contributor to GHG emissions, accounting for about 95% of emissions in the freight sector. Trucks also accounted for about 12.3% of road accidents and 15.8% of the total road transport-related deaths in 2018. Rail emits about one-fifth of the truck's GHG emissions, and with Indian Railways planning to become a net zero carbon emitter by 2030, it has the potential to eliminate 7.5 million tons of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases each year, it added. First Bharat Gaurav train arrives in Nepal's Janakpur. The inaugural Bharat Gaurav train connecting destinations associated with Ramayana circuit in India and Nepal arrived in Nepal's Janakpur on June 23rd with 500 tourists from India. The 14-coach train, which arrived at Janakpur Dham station, was flagged off from Delhi's Safdarjung railway station on June 20th. The Indian government had launched this initiative to join all major places related to Lord Rama and Sita and develop the Ramayana circuit. The train operating on the Ramayana circuit will also cover religious destinations of Janakpur, Nepal, for the first time, in addition to other popular destinations such as Ayodhya, Nandigram, Sitamarhi, Varanasi, Prayagraj, Chitrakoot, Panchavati, Hampi, Rameshwaram and Bhadrachalam. The train is expected to boost tourism in India and Nepal further. Over 3 million pilgrims register for the Char Dham Yatra so far this year. At least 3.3 million pilgrims have registered for the Char Dham Yatra in Gurudwara Hemkund Sahib, of which nearly 2.3 million have already visited the Himalayan shrines since the pilgrimage started on May 3rd, officials from the Uttarakhand Tourism Department said. In 2019, over 3.2 million pilgrims visited the Char Dham shrines before the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, leading to curbs on the pilgrimage for the past 2 years. Char Dham shrines remained shut for nearly 6 months due to blockage of roads caused by intense snowfall in the winter. The yatra opens in summer, April or May, and closes with the onset of winter, October or November. The yatra is a tour of 4 Hindu holy sites, Yamunotri, Gangotri, Kedarnath and Badrinath, nestled high up in the Himalayas in Uttarakhand. India's GSAT-24 satellite launched, entire capacity leased to Tata Play. New Space India Limited on June 23rd undertook the launch of GSAT-24 in its first demand-driven communication satellite mission post-space sector reforms, leasing the entire capacity on board to direct-to-home service provider Tata Play. Built by the Indian Space Research Organisation for NSIL, GSAT-24 is a 24 Ku-band communication satellite weighing 4,180 kgs with pan-India coverage for meeting DTH application needs. Ariane V, V-257 flight operated by French company Arianespace, also carried a Measat 3D communication satellite from Malaysia as another co-passenger. As part of the space reforms announced by the government in June 2020, NSIL, incorporated in March 2019, was mandated to undertake operational satellite missions on a demand-driven model, wherein it had the responsibility to build, launch, own and operate satellites and provide service to its committed customer. The entire satellite capacity on board GSAT-24 will be leased to its committed customer Tata Play, the DTH business of Tata Group, for meeting their DTH application needs. GSAT-24 is configured on ISRO's proven 13K bus. The trailer of Kicha Sudeep starrer Vikrant Rona is out now.
कहानी को छुपाया जा सकता है, लेकिन डर को नहीं। वो कहानी फिर से शुरू हुई। वो डेविल फिर वापस आया।
The moment that all Kicha Sudeep fans have been waiting for is finally here. The trailer of Vikrant Rona released on June 23rd. The film stars Kicha Sudeep and Jacqueline Fernandez in the lead. The VFX and South Superstars' heroic entry has netizens' attention. To top it all, fans are hopeful that the film is going to be a massive hit. Vikrant Rona trailer lived up to its expectations. It takes us to a village and we couldn't stop admiring the brilliant VFX. Kicha Sudeep's heroic entry on a majestic ship took the cake. Jacqueline Fernandez appears in a small role in the trailer, but she managed to grab everyone's attention within a short span of time. The background score was offbeat too. Loaded with VFX and picture-perfect graphics, the village scene, Kicha Sudeep's entry on the ship, the tiny glimpse of Jacqueline Fernandez, everything about the trailer is grand. That's all in today's bulletin.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that's about all we have for you in today's bulletin. And don't forget that from tomorrow we'll bring to you the updated version of the functions and events and what's taking place in and around Brisbane. It's been wonderful having your company here on this 27th day of June, where the temperature right here in Brisbane from where we are broadcasting is now 16 degrees and mostly sunny. Until tomorrow, it's goodbye from us.